Well, welcome everybody. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today. This is my final Somerset gig of 2024. 2 years I've been cranking myself around the country, having an absolute blast. Now, I just want to let you know, the last event I did in New Plymouth was probably the most glorious event that I've done so far. There was a lot of people there asking some magnificent questions, but walking in here today, I think it might rival that. Because I've already had about 25 questions and I love that, right? So any questions that you have today, please make sure that you yell them out at me, put your hand up or whatever. I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I will find out and let you know. Today, what are we going to cook though? So today is all about a trip around the Mediterranean. Some of us might have been lucky enough to do that. I've done a little bit, not the whole thing. So I thought, how am I going to choose out my favourite dishes for the day? And then I thought, you know what, it's about keeping things simple in the Med. Every time I've been there, it's never been overcomplicated and they let the ingredients shine. So I thought I would do something really similar. So we're going to go to Italy first. We're going to do a puttanesca, which does roughly translate into English, which I'm not going to do today, but if anybody does know what it translates to, maybe you could enlighten everybody else, and that could be a great thing to say. The second dish I'm going to do today is a Greek-style marinated fish, just fish skewers on a little bit of a yogurt sauce with a bit of pickled veg. I thought spring is here, and I went to the supermarket this morning, and if you're anything like me, there's always stuff there that you're like, oh, I might just get that and add it in. So I've done that. But the fish dish is beautiful, just a really simple salad to go with that. And then the third dish I'm gonna do is a Spanish, I would say, influenced chicken dish. So a little bit of paprika and garlic and a little bit of wine. All three dishes are very simple, but I think have great flavor. Right, to get things started. You can use linguine or spaghetti, it really doesn't matter. I'm just gonna do a single serve. And I did ask somebody a little bit earlier on, how do you know what one serve of pasta is? And they said you just grab it in your hand like that. So that's what my mum said as well. So that's what I'm going to do today. So my water is always going to be at a rolling boil. Guys, this is up as high as it'll go, so it's not the most powerful machine that I've got. But what I do make sure that I've done is salted the water. So it's boiling, it's hot. Tastes like the ocean. Okay, so it's more salt than you ever believed that you should put in there, but it actually makes the pasta a lot better. Okay, so straight in with that. I've got around about 6 minutes. My mum always used to say too, just wait a couple of seconds, Brett, and you can push everything in. But I've also noticed if you don't worry, usually it just all kind of gets in by itself anyway, right? So I'm going to say 6 minutes roughly for the pasta. I'm going to turn my pan on hot, as high as it'll go, and I've got 2 cloves of garlic. Now, I find that when I'm doing a very simple dish like this, the most important thing is building the flavours up as much as you can. So number one is with my garlic, I'm just going to crush it. Have you guys seen how much a piece of garlic is at the supermarket at the moment? So yes, actually this is the first time I have bought New Zealand garlic in quite a long time. I've been buying the Chinese stuff that is already pre-peeled. And when you get it home, it's got a little sachet in there that seems to try and keep everything fresh. But I'll admit that when I get home, I think you get another 5 days out of that garlic and it starts to go off. So I figure it's probably nearly a year old by the time we're getting it here. And the smell and the taste of it is nowhere near as good. So into my pan, I've got some olive oil. Hands up if anyone's bought olive oil in the last couple of weeks. There's a few of you. So other people have taken out mortgages on other homes as well. Because I will definitely say that $30 for this bottle of oil today.
Why is it so expensive?
Because there's lots of problems with the olives. New Zealand olives are doing okay, but around the rest of the world there's a lot of issues with olives, as well as cacao, chocolate. So you'll see those two products becoming super expensive. Now, I don't know about this one, but I'll also say that when you're going to the supermarket, make sure you read the back of the labels. And if they say olive oil and they say blended, then you know there's something else in there as well. And the majority of them are, unless you're buying like a 500 ml for $30. Okay, so into my pan, heat a little bit of oil, in with a couple of cloves of garlic. That is on full noise. And I've got some anchovies here. Now, I know a lot of people don't really like these. But if you use them quite sparingly, they disappear and they add this umami like a fish sauce does to a curry. So I'm just going to add in, well, I'm only doing a single serve, so I'll just put one in there for now. What I want to do is get this garlic nice and golden, and I want to mash my anchovy fillet right into there so it all cooks out, okay? Now, while that's happening, we'll get that nice and golden. We've got a few other bits and bobs. Now, I'm all about the fresh herbs, so I've got 3 fresh herbs for this today. I've got some parsley, some oregano, and a little bit of basil. You could easily use, if you've got in your garden, marjoram. You could use marjoram. It's really up to you, okay? I find adding the herbs at the end are probably where you get most of the flavour from, right? You add them in when they are still raw. They cook, they just wilt into the sauce, and they have bucket loads of flavour. So I'm also going to add in some black olives. Do you know what? These are probably my least favourite out of all the olives, but you got to have them. Nice saltiness, add a little bit of a pickled tone. Rightio. You might notice too that when I'm doing my cutting, guys, I do a couple of things. One is I always use the claw technique, so my hand's always back like this. And if you can see when you're doing that, you've got one little knuckle that sticks out a little bit further than the rest. So that means that when I'm going to cut, that becomes my guide. Don't do that. It definitely happens. But when that becomes my guide, then I know I'm going to have a nice safe cut. My thumb is what I use to push the onion through or whatever it is that I need to push through. Rightio, so I've got some black olives there. You can see in my pan too that it's just starting to get nice and golden. What you don't want to do there is burn it obviously. But I can smell that already beautiful. So as soon as that starts to get nice and golden, I'm going to go in with my tomatoes. Now, I'm just going to add in the whole can here. They are whole tomatoes that have been peeled. Okay, and the reason that I'm going for the whole tomatoes, usually if I was at home, I would just crush those in with my hand. Now, if you make pizzas at home, even in the oven, 1 can of these Italian-style tomatoes, okay, into a saucepan, crush them with your hand, half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of sugar, a sprig of basil, and then you cook that down until it thickens, take it off, and you have the best, most delicious pizza sauce you could ever have. Rightio, so into there now. These are just going to really thicken up, but it's also time now for me. I could imagine that tomato going everywhere. Now this is the time too that I'll start to season up a little bit, okay? So salt goes in, pepper goes in, check your pasta. At home, I have many arguments about pasta because I know that my wife loves pasta when it is super soft, and I like it when it's got a little bit of chew. So we kind of don't really see eye to eye on that, and that's almost close. In Italy, I would say that was probably almost perfect. There's always a little bit of al dente, they call it, but I think it's slightly under, right? That's what I'm going for today. Into my sauce, a little bit of chili. I won't go too much because somebody's probably going to try it here. Okay. Now, you just got to make sure that you crush your tomatoes in like so. Most simple sauce ever.
The tin you had, was that from the supermarket?
It was from a New World this morning. $2.89 they were. They're a bit on special. They were cheaper actually today than the Watties. So cheaper to buy the Italian imported than the local. How does everyone feel about that? What's going on, do you think, at the moment? It's definitely not easy going to the supermarket at the moment when you're on a bit of a budget, right? And I think everybody is definitely on a budget when they're going. So into here, you can see, you know when you're cooking a tomato sauce at home, and sometimes you might put your pasta in and get it to the table, and there might be a little bit of thin water around the outside of your sauce. That's simply because you kind of haven't cooked it down enough to get rid of that, right? It's a really simple process. If you find that you've over-reduced it, then just add in a little bit more liquid. And stock works really fine. It doesn't really, it's up to you. I also find, which I haven't got, is a little bit of sugar at times, because tomatoes aren't always the same. Rightio, so we have my olives going in there. I've got some capers here as well. Yeah, they are. I'm just going to do a few though. Just run my knife through really quickly like so, and then that goes in as well. So we've got in here just our tomatoes, we've got the garlic, okay, we've got a little bit of anchovy, which is obviously going to make it a little bit salty. All the olives and the capers also do the same. Now, this is like a pasta you would get down on the coast near the ocean, okay? Usually it would be a very poor person's pasta, okay? That's as much as I'm going to say. Rightio, so I think this is going to be perfect now.
Let me get a close up.
If that's my mum, I'm telling you. I love it. Rightio, I'll have a taste. So simple, and already the flavour in the sauce is amazing. So, thinking about my garnish, I'm just going to add in some finely cut parsley. Really important with curly parsley, guys, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, for you to give it a good rinse. Curly parsley carries a lot of listeria and things like that. Some fresh oregano. You can see I'm not worried too much about the stalks, but if I am feeling them coming through the knife, then I'll just cut them a little bit finer. The basil, I'm going to do the same. Yeah, well, it's funny because I do keep them quite sharp, but that's probably not one of the greatest ones. Rightio, so I'm just going to take my pasta out here. I'm going to leave a little bit of water as well into this bowl here. Now, if I was going to make like a carbonara right now, in another bowl here, I'd have a couple of eggs whisked up with Parmesan cheese, okay? Then all I would do was I'd take that pasta, put it into that bowl and keep mixing it, put a bit of this water in there and keep mixing it, and that egg will create this beautiful sauce. Really, really simple dish to make. Okay, so back here, I'll turn my water off and that might make that go a bit faster. Okay, so you can see here when you're looking in, it's still a tiny little bit loose. I could go thicker, but it's actually going to cling onto that pasta really nicely. Grab a bowl. Now, this is one of those things that if you get home and you've got a 6-minute cook on a pasta, how long is this dish just taking to cook? So I did a little bit of prep beforehand, but not much. But realistically, you could have this on the table within 6 minutes of getting home, excuse me, which I love. Now, even looking in there now, it's thickened up quite nicely. You can see here, though, there's still a little bit of liquid there. So if I turn my pan up, I'll reduce that slightly. We'll have one more taste just to make sure. What's another ingredient that is missing from here that you would normally have in Italian? What do you normally put over the top? Parmesan. So I'm not even using Parmesan cheese in here, okay? Now my rule of thumb with Parmesan is if anything that has fish in it, I don't normally put cheese on it. Okay, so I've used a little bit of anchovy, so I keep that off. But if you're at home and you're eating it and you're like, actually, that needs some Parmesan cheese, then put it on there. In Italy, you might get frowned on a little bit, but I really don't think it matters. Right, into here. Put my pasta. I don't want to scratch my pan, so I'll use my wooden spatula. And you can see straight away the amount of flavour that comes onto your pasta. Now I'm going to go in with my fresh herbs, the whole lot, and then just mix that through, and basically that is my puttanesca completed. Very simple. If tomatoes are in season, etc., then I would suggest to use the fresh tomatoes out of your garden. Just add a little bit of water, take your core out, etc. Add a tiny bit of water, and there you have it. This is actually looking, it's looking very good. That's annoying.
It's sticking quite well, isn't it?
Oh, it's just really beautiful on the pasta. Now, I love lobster sauce, so I'm going to put the sauce on.
Yeah, it does smell nice.
Thank you. So, this is my puttanesca. What did I do with those tongs? Okay. Right. I'm going to give this to somebody to have a try. So I always like to make sure that the bowl's nice and tidy. So clean that edge of your bowl up. I'm going to take just a little bit of basil. Quite thick slices for that one. Coat that over the top because I find that with basil, that instant smell is beautiful. A little bit of pepper. And just a little bit of parsley to finish it off. Beautiful. Okay, so that is dish one, my puttanesca. Okay, now dish number two. This is really, really one of my favourite things to do in summer. Got a clove of garlic, lemon. I've got some turmeric, a little bit of cumin, half a cup of yogurt. So into my bowl, start off with around about half a cup of yogurt. I'm going to zest in the zest of a lemon. I've had this for 15 years. I didn't think it would last that long. It was probably $55 to buy back then. But if you go to Mitre 10, you can buy all of these things like little rafts and graters and stuff for a lot cheaper. Just don't use them out in the garden. Just keep them in the kitchen. Rightio, a little bit of lemon zest goes into there. Cumin and turmeric, I'm just going to do this to taste. So probably a quarter of a teaspoon of turmeric, of cumin. And I'm going to go probably another half, just between a quarter and a half. 1 grind of salt. I was doing a demonstration at ANZ Bank just last week. I was just telling these guys about that. And I had bought a brand new thing of pepper. And one of the other chefs thought it would be really funny to loosen that like that. And so I didn't know, and there's like a whole lot of people like this, and I'm like, okay, let's go. And now you just add in a little bit of pepper. I picked it up and I ground it and the whole lot. The whole lot went into the pan. They all went on the floor. You know, what do you do in that situation? If you don't laugh, you will definitely cry. I got a lot of laughs. Okay, so into there. Now I'm just going to crush 1 small clove of garlic, a half a big one. Crush that. Now, if I'm at home, I think you guys probably know this, but if I'm at home making garlic bread, I crush my garlic like so. I take my knife, I just go like this until it creates a paste, and you'll see that the salt will create that paste really fast. Then I mix this into my butter with my parsley, salt, pepper, into my stale bread, into the oven, wrapped in tin foil. Beautiful. Rightio, so that's in there now. Now mix that together. Now that becomes the base sauce for my dish today. In fact, half of it, I'm going to do this. Keep half for the bottom of my plate, and for the other half, take my fish. And in fact, looking at the colour of that, can you guys see the colour of that? Probably not yellow enough for me. I might just take it a little bit more yellow. So the turmeric. Now turmeric's what they used to use to colour all the monks' robes, if you remember that. Buddhist monks. Rightio, so into there now. I've got my fish, and I don't know what happened to this fish, but I've got a sneaky feeling that these people have a very sharp knife, and they're getting 3 fillets out of 1. So that just goes straight into there. If you've got a lot of time, do it for 30 minutes, okay? If you don't have a lot of time, like I do, just 30 minutes in the refrigerator. If you don't have a lot of time, like I do, then just go for maximum 20 minutes outside of the refrigerator. Okay, and then that should be perfectly marinated for you. Now, while that is marinating for a couple of minutes, I'm going to get very dirty here in a minute. I'll get my pan onto, I'm going to use a griddle pan, but it really doesn't matter what pan you want to use for this. But while that's happening, I've got a couple of things. So I have some fennel here, which I've just really thinly shaved. I used a mandolin for that, okay? Right now, in season, you're getting a huge amount of this, a huge amount of the tops, right, which you can use for lots of other things anyway. Great in roast. To cook a fennel, actually, with a roast pork is beautiful. Okay, it cooks down just like an onion does, but that makes a really delicious and a good change from the normal onions, right? So all I've done is I've cut those down really small and I've squeezed half a lemon on there so that it doesn't oxidize, okay? Second thing, I've taken asparagus today because asparagus is in season. Right now, don't buy it yet, wait another few weeks. $7.50, you know. But all I've done, I've kept it raw. Okay, and I've just shaved it really small because I quite like, I love raw asparagus. When it's straight in the season right now, it's at its sweetest as well. So I thought, why not? So I've kept that really simple. Now, into this bowl, I'm going to put them like this actually so that I'm not taking all the space. Into here, I want the juice of a lemon. Okay.
What about the cups?
I just making sure I'm sieving them out. I don't think this lemon had any pips, which was quite lucky, eh? Rightio, so a little bit of lemon juice. This is where it gets a little bit strange, so I've got a little bit of honey. Okay, just about a teaspoon. What I need to do there is give that a mix. Now, instead of using like a vinegar or something like that, I'm just making a quick pickle. So I'm not going to use any sugar either. So it's sweetened with honey and just lemon juice, right?
What sort of honey have you got?
I knew you were going to ask that. I've got a bush honey, I think it is, or maybe it's a floral honey. It's a New Zealand one at the moment. So Manuka Doctor. And it's not expensive, but the reason I bought it is because I had never tried honey like it. It's really floral, really quite beautiful.
Never seen it, no.
No, well, there you go. You can have that. Yeah, you can have that. Try it. Well, if you don't want it, I'm going to give it to the lovely lady beside you.
You'll take it.
If I need more, though, I'm coming back. So into there, right, I don't have a huge amount, but into there, all I'm thinking about is what's going to be quite nice and crisp and crunchy on the top of the fish, right? So you can see the onion there, it's got those lines going this way, right? So if I'm making a salad sometimes, I'll do them this way, cut the onion that way. If I'm doing a stir fry, I cut them with those lines. The reason I cut them with those lines is that the structure's a lot stronger and they keep their shape a lot better, okay? For this, it doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to go thin and across like so. Okay, nice and thin, straight into my liquid there. And then I have, a little bit of cucumber as well. Now all I'm going to do is really get this in there. I'll put a little bit of salt on there as well. And then they will almost start to pickle and break down, just soften a touch. Okay, so I think I'm just going to go rounds. During MasterChef, when we did the auditions, that was one of the skill tests that we had to do that didn't make the TV screen, right? So they said to you, grab a cucumber, and they said, what we want to do is you want to cut that cucumber as evenly as you can, as fast as you can. You've got 10 seconds. And so there were 60 of us, so they split us into 2 groups, and the first 30 went up, and there was this gentleman, Carlos, that I was standing behind. He was my roommate. And he got his knife, and he's standing there, and he's like, okay, let's go. So Ray McVinney said, go. And as soon as he said go, they came out, and Carlos goes, stands back. Everyone else is still chopping. He had seconds to go. What he had done, though, is that he had cut his cucumber. It was even, but only into 3 pieces. It didn't go down well. And so what reminded me is that when I was cutting mine like this, at that time, the cucumber, this one, was staying on my knife, and the next one was going like this, and it was rolling. Sorry, it was rolling like that down on the floor. And so when the judges came along, and they were like, well, Brett, you don't have any cucumber, where's yours? I went like that. And so they picked it up off the floor, had a look, and I got through the next stage. I think some of those things would have been awesome for people to actually have seen, you know. And now that I've cut them so quickly, they're probably not the most even and beautiful as they could have been, but I'm not worried, okay? So just into that lemon juice. As I said, you do want to add in a little bit of salt because the salt will also draw out the moisture. I'll season because I feel like I need to do that constantly. And into here, right, my skewers. Rightio. Are there any questions so far? I've got a couple of books to give away for great questions. Yes?
I'm sorry to go back to your first dish, but I have trouble with arthritis in my right hand, and as such, I can't cook. The pasta like you have is relatively easy. I can get it out. But ordinary pasta, is there another way of cooking? Like I've tried to boil it in the micro, or is there?
So you're meaning that when you go to like just the different size pastas, or just cooking them in general?
It's cooking them in general. The shoestring ones, as I call them.
Yeah.
You can get them out like you do with tongs.
Yeah.
But to try and get out.
You know what I would buy if I was you? I would buy a kitchen tool called a spider. And a spider is like a sieve, but with a long handle. And they use in Asian takeaway stores all the time. And they're for taking stuff out of the deep fryer. And that there, I just broke my handle, I think, last week on mine, so I need to buy a new one as well.
That'll make the sticks all wet.
Hey, I bet that one there was. He's like this. Now, I'd had some water with my skewers in it, and they've been in there for an hour, so they're nice and soaked. The reason you do that, though, is because if you don't, they're going to catch on fire. Not so bad like when you're doing this, but if you're doing them on the barbecue, they're going to catch on fire. Okay? My pan is on, and I'm going to say it's actually on as hot as it'll go, but I'm going to just turn it down slightly. Now, I have a little bit of snapper here at the moment. There was a choice of 2 just around the corner from here, and I'm going to say the choice was hokey or snapper, and I'll always go for the snapper, although over hokey I mean, but I'm trying to never buy those brands, those varieties. We need to move away from those varieties. It's like whitebait. Last week I bought my first whitebait of the season. Has anybody had whitebait this season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's a few people that know where to get it from, or have people getting it, right? So $165 a packet, which was probably 500 grams, I'm thinking, because they certainly wasn't a kilo. So we spent $450 on the whitebait, and we were doing 200-gram whitebait and 1 egg omelettes. And it's delicious. But I think we're in trouble, and we might have to slow down on the eating of the whitebait at some point, because I think we need to make sure the stocks stay, right?
I saw white bait down here at the motor shop, frozen
Yeah.
in a pack. It's probably overseas white bait.
Yeah, are you talking about just this one on the corner? I saw it as well because I just had the conversation with the gentleman. $7.95.
That's right.
I said, where's this from?
Yeah, so is it New Zealand, China.
And it was, he said it was New Zealand, and I said, are you sure about that? And he said he was adamant that it was, and I said, well, then it must be last season's or the year before because nobody is, you know, that's...
I've looked at it a couple of times, yeah. I won't on.
Yeah. I've still got some in my freezer from last year, which probably isn't a great thing either. But very beautiful. Very beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I asked my husband if he had to gut it.
Oh. Well, I have heard people say you're going to take the eyes out first, so it does happen, right? Rightio. Now, I have my skewers are done. So obviously, if you had an oil spray, that's the best thing to use now. Okay, but I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in my pan, and then a little bit of oil over my skewers as well. Rule of thumb for fish: if you're cooking it in a pan, skin side down. Okay. If you ever get a fish and it's got the skin on, never ever let that fish touch water unless it's salt water. So the drier you can keep your fish, the better the skin will be when you cook it in your pan. Okay, so you imagine this. If you've got something that you're going to take the scales off a fish, that's like a rake, and you're raking down the side of the fish, and all the scales are coming off like they used to, you know, you do it down the beach before you go home. But what's happening is that when you're taking that scale off, you're raking a tiny little air pocket that goes into the side of the skin of the fish. You would have seen those when you've been doing it. When you do that and you clean the fish off with water, you get water inside those little pockets. So no matter how much you think you dry the skin of the fish off to go cook it, it's always going to have moisture there and it's never going to go very crispy. So I believe it's really good to keep it as dry as possible, right? Always cook it skin side down. And go from there. Right, straight in. These are so thin, I'm going to cook them through the majority of one side. I really want to do that one.
Are those still better to use in the fry pan?
Sorry, is that what?
Are those what you're cooking that in now?
Yeah.
Are they better to use in the fry pan?
I think it's a personal preference, really. Like a lot of people cook steaks in a pan like this so they get the lines on the steak. But I like my whole steak caramelised, not just the lines. So I prefer my steak being cooked in a pan that's flat rather than a griddle pan, but that's a personal preference. Yeah, it's a funny one, that one, isn't it?
I saw one special at Kmart, and I've been tossing up, but now you've answered it.
Yeah, I think like for chicken and things like that, it's quite good, you know, and at times and for a dish like this, you know, but I just, yeah, I prefer the other way. Okay, now into my bowl. Okay, a little bit of my sauce into the bottom. Check the fish. Not yet. Rightio. Fish, I've got my fresh herbs. There's a bit of basil and a little bit of dill. Okay, I'm just going to try one of the onions. Yum. Okay, they've pickled up really nicely. You can see already the colour of the onions changed just like it would in vinegar. So you can do pickles a few different ways, right? You can, obviously, you could do just vinegar, sugar, and a little bit of water, right? And just do a cold pickle. Or you can boil that up until the sugar dissolves and tip your hot liquid over your cooled vegetables. Or this way, obviously. And this way, they still have kept, you know how an onion's quite peppery until if you've pickled it in hot liquid, it kind of takes off that real harshness. This pepperiness of the onion is still there. Nice. All right, check the fish. I'm going to leave it another couple of seconds. I've found, in fact, when we're cooking fish on a large scale, like salmon, etc., when I'm going skin side down on a piece of salmon, I would cook it skin side down for probably 3/4 of the cooking time, almost until you could tell that it's almost come through to the top. And in fact, some people are definitely saying now that if you are cooking a piece of fish skin side down first, you should never flip that piece of fish over and let the flesh touch the pan. You should finish it in the oven. So have your oven at 200, 220 degrees, as hot as it'll go. Sear it off. When you're happy with the way the skin looks, that's when you can take it off. Finish it off in the oven, and as soon as it's opaque, like even before you think it, well, definitely before you think it's perfect, you take it out and you just let it rest up. Beautiful. Okay, I'm getting some nice colour on there now. This is what I wanted. Wow, it's definitely a very, very thin piece of fish. Be very gentle. Probably not gentle enough. Okay, oh, it looks very good though. A little bit of salt to finish those off. Now, the fennel. I thought the best thing to do would just take off some really nice thin pieces of fennel and at the end mix them through with my red onion, etc. And then same, okay, just with a tiny, tiny piece of the asparagus as well. Because that's actually going to become the salad that goes on the top. It's almost like a garnish over the whole thing, okay? Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, now I'm going to turn my pan off. Okay, now the fish is just becoming opaque, right? So you can just see through it. I want it to stay quite juicy. And you can see when you have a look at it, it's just cooked, okay? You can see here I've got a bit of colour on that one. A little bit of colour. And then this side just touched. It's very delicious. I've actually known that this is what I'll have for tea tonight because, as I said, I left all the ingredients at home. So this will be my wife and I for dinner. I'm going to put a little bit of salad on the bottom. Okay, take a few skewers. Broke it. Actually, I might do that one. Okay, a few skewers over the top. Back into my pickles. Got some beautiful dill here to finish that off, to echo the flavours that we've used. A little bit of the fennel. I do all the cooking at home. For who? No, I do all the cooking at home for 100%. And unless I'm not there, which isn't very often, this dish is actually, this is a cracker. So, snapper skewers, turmeric and cumin, pickled, it's lemon and honey pickled veg, and just with a little bit of dill on the top. Now, can I just say though, there was that lovely lady at the back there that was asking the question. I'm going to give you the first book just to get the ball rolling. Now, I'll sign this for you at the end, okay? So that one's for you. What's your name, sorry?
Frankie.
Frankie, that one's for you. So now this last dish, there's a couple of funny things in this dish. And the first one is, I know I'm obsessed with garlic. So once this pan goes on, I'm going to put a little bit of oil in there. And for this particular dish, it's as many garlic cloves as you like, okay? I've got some bay leaves out of the garden. Some thyme, thanks to Superb Herbs. In fact, can I also say that Who grows herbs in their gardens here? Thank goodness. Because this container here of the parsley, the oregano, and the thyme, that's $15. Just for those ingredients there. Well, if I count that, there's 20. So for the herbs and for the oil is $50. Okay, so my Spanish-style garlic. Now, I do this for my stir-fries as well. One of the most amazing things I could teach you right now is my garlic and pepper chicken recipe. It's the fastest thing that you could cook in a kitchen. You buy the rice in a packet that takes 45 seconds in the microwave. It's not the greatest rice. But if you're in a hurry, we've got to do what we've got to do, right? So then I take 5, 6, 7, 8 cloves of garlic and I smash them all or slice them thinly like so. Okay? Once I've sliced my garlic, this is for a different dish that I'm telling you about now, but the oil goes in the pan, then I'm going to cook this garlic until it goes nice and crispy, right? Nice and golden and crispy. And then I'm taking that garlic out of the pan and into my pan goes the chicken. Chicken stir fry straight away. As soon as the chicken's almost cooked, I go a teaspoon of oyster sauce, a few tablespoons of soy sauce, and a whole lot of white pepper. Okay? You can add some stock in there if you want to. You cook that until it's ready, you put the garlic back in, and that's garlic and pepper chicken. One of the easiest Thai dishes you could ever make, and one of the tastiest.
Greg, I have trouble with garlic going off.
Yep.
So what's the...
Are you buying like a...
And the little pot, you know, the...
On the bottles? They are in the white mesh packets. It's Chinese. So I would say that that's been bleached to make it so white and perfect, first and foremost. And the thing is, as soon as you get that home, right, I know everyone will be the same. You get the first few days out of it and you're like, oh, this is actually quite good value. And then you realise the next time you go back, all the other ones have started to rot. Look, I think if you've got a vacuum sealer or something like that at home, I would seal them up and just throw them into the freezer. Or I'd make it all into a garlic puree, and then you could put them into like a ice cube trays or whatever they want, and then every time you want one, you can just pop one out. Like I do that with my curry pastes a lot as well. Rightio, oil goes in. Now I've got quite a good glug of oil in there. I would say it's a good Jamie Oliver couple of tablespoons. Would you say that? Yeah, a quarter of a cup.
Elephant garlic.
Yes, beautiful. You know, at the moment, what I've started to do is what is around me that I can get. So in my local dog park, there's 4 different types of mushrooms. You got to know which ones to get, to be honest. There's slippery jacks, there's porcinis. So we're going and we're collecting those. At the moment, garlic chives are everywhere, onion chives are everywhere, and they're just growing. Yes, you have to wash those prolifically because you don't know what animal has been in the park at the same time. But those things are edible, even down to the oxalis in your gardens. You know, you can eat the oxalis, you can eat the flowers, you can put them into your salads and stuff like that. The root from your parsley, when it grows really long, everyone throws it out. If you clean the root from your parsley, you can roast it off with your roast and it's delicious. So there's lots of things like that that we can do that mean that we're not wasting so much out of the garden, because there's no doubt that we waste a lot. You know, this is the thing that I find when I get home, if I've been away, if I've gone and done the shopping, and I go away for a few days, and then I come home and I always go to the refrigerator and I check one drawer, and that's that one that you pull out like that to see how many vegetables my family's gone through since I haven't been there. And I know straight away there's been takeaways every single night because everything's still in there. Yeah, and then I get really frustrated because I don't want anything to go, right? I don't want to throw anything away. Okay, I've got some beautiful paprika. Now this recipe actually doesn't call for any stock, but I thought I would show you something that if you needed to use the stock that you could. The paprika is definitely not all created equal. This one and any other one that you can see in a red container that's very similar to this, they're absolutely beautiful. The smell is 10 times stronger than anything else that you would smell. And because most of the dried herbs and stuff that we buy from the supermarkets are actually very old.
What brand is it?
I think this is called Chiquilin. So this will be an imported one, I would say. Yeah. Mexican, it's beautiful, eh? Oh no, it's Spanish. It's gluten-free. Funny that, paprika. Okay, now we're going with the pan. So we're starting to get some heat happening now. Now we're starting to cook. Very, very easy. Okay, so I want that garlic to get super, super golden. And as soon as it's ready to go, I will take it out of the pan and I'll put it onto a clean cloth so it basically stops cooking, because I'm just going to add it back again at the end. Okay. Has anyone got their new KitchenAid containers from the supermarket yet?
Yeah.
What is everyone thinking of these? Is it a good one that I've done?
Haven't used mine yet.
Oh.
The little one with the bits. Is that the small?
That's the small one. Yeah, I was going to say that's the extra large one. That is the small one, and that has not dropped any liquid out of there.
Is it waterproof?
Yeah. Yeah, well, now it's not, because I've just undone the seal. But beforehand, I was actually doing exactly that. And yes, because all of the other containers that I've bought from the supermarkets that say they are non-leak all end up leaking. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Usually, what you'd do is once that was nice and golden, I would remove it. But now that it's halfway, I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to do a couple of bits of chicken as well. So I'm not going to bother about cutting them or anything like that. I'm just going to do a couple of whole pieces, a couple of thighs. It's funny what's happening in New Zealand at the moment with our chicken, because at my work, we are not allowed to buy chicken thighs. So we can only buy the chicken breasts, because chicken thighs are now being utilised so often that there is a glut in the breast. So we've got more breasts than thighs. That's why you've seen the price is around about the same, right? And if I'm going to be honest, it's a lot harder to debone that than it is to debone the breast. So this should actually be more expensive in my mind. So right, a little bit of salt and pepper onto there, get a nice little bit of colour. You see the garlic there. I'm going to move the garlic around my chicken a little bit now so it's going to get nice and golden. Nice and crisp. Okay, into there. Bay leaves from home, from the house. I'll just put a couple of those in. Every single herb that I grow at home, I dehydrate or dry out, and then that gets me through to the next time I get to do the same thing. And I find the flavour in them is way better. That's why we were talking air fryers before with a lovely couple of people. I think they might have moved over here. And we were saying, there's a couple of air fryers that actually have dehumidifier, but they have a dehydrators in them as well. And it's a really good function to have, I reckon. Awesome. Right, my garlic's starting to get nice and golden here now. Perfect. So bay leaf in, I've got some thyme. I'm just going to throw the thyme in whole like so. It will split a spatter a little bit, but I don't mind. Okay, starting to smell nice already actually. Now into there. If you find at this stage, as I said, I haven't taken my garlic out, okay? You should do that, take your garlic out. But if you haven't and you're doing it like the way I do and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it looks like some of that garlic's getting too caramelised. All I do is that you can pick it up like so, and then I just dump it on the top of the chicken and leave it in the pan, okay? Doesn't matter at all. Rightio, some paprika. Keep forgetting to get teaspoons, eh? I'm just going to do a little bit in here, maybe a little sprinkle like so on the top of there. Because what I can see now is my garlic's getting, you can see in here, beautiful, that garlic is there. Not the whole way around yet, but it's getting there. Now that paprika's gone in, you should get a really beautiful smell. And it really changes the colour. Now, wine. I was going to bring the whole bottle, and then I thought that's inappropriate because I'm going to sit the bottle down there and it's going to sit there the whole time and everyone's going to be thinking about wine before they start thinking about what I'm doing. No, I've got a really good wine story. I went and cooked with Rick Stein in his house. And I walked into his house and I had taken a really beautiful bottle of white New Zealand wine. And I went, and it was 9:30 in the morning, and I said, "Hello, how are you?" And he's like, "Really well, ready to cook." And I said, "I bought you a gift, it's not too early." He goes, "No, it's not." And so we sat down together, worked out what the dish was going to be, and it was a seafood linguine, because Bannister's, his restaurant, was just around the corner. We cooked together, we drank wine together, we laughed together, and I tell you right now, it was one of the best cooking experiences I've had. He was just like the guy next door, you're going to visit your neighbour. It's just like that. Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing him. Okay, so now with the wine, I've got some nice colour on the chicken. There's by no means is that chicken cooked all the way through, but I can see now if I don't get some other liquid in there, my garlic will begin to burn. But I haven't been panicking about that. Now the main thing here is to cook all the alcohol out, right? So no matter how much you put in, whether it's a bottle, half a bottle, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You want to reduce it down to 1/3 of the liquid you had. And if, you know, it takes a couple of minutes. Even if it all goes, it's irrelevant. The flavour is still going to be in there. Now this is the part of the dish that I think I'm changing. Now this is from the very first book I wrote, Taste of a Traveller. And the reason that I've got the stock handy here is because I've noticed that when I cook this dish, sometimes I do over-reduce the wine, and I do lose that, and I lose a little bit of sauce that it creates. And so I've kept, and this is just a stock cube, it's not a flash stock. If you have flash stock, then use flash stock. And I just keep that handy in case I need to add anything in there. That's the only reason I've got it there. Yeah, I think it's important to do that. Yeah, scale's getting there. Rightio, while we're waiting for that to cook down, I've got another book here. Has anyone got any more questions, or do I have to start asking them? Yes, right at the back.
Do you use smoked paprika or do you use plain?
I actually use sweet, smoked and plain. I do find that the smoky one just gives it a little bit more of a Spanish flavour than the other two. Yep, that's what, or Moorish, you know, that kind of North African Spanish kind of flavour. That's a great question. Yep.
When doing fish, do you ever use margarine here? Because I heard it's delicious.
It is. If there was some in the supermarket today, I would have had some today, and I would have used it instead of exactly. It's exactly what I would have done. But marjoram doesn't grow the same in my garden at home. I don't know if everybody else. And tarragon is the same. My tarragon never seems to be a good bush. It seems to be a little spindly. Okay, now this dish, if I'm having it at home, what I would usually do is serve it with like some crispy potato bravas or something like that, okay? So in your air fryer, dice your potatoes, 1 to 2 centimetre dice. You put it straight up onto 200. You just mix your oil. You can do onion powder, garlic powder into your potatoes, and then straight into the air fryer. They take 25 minutes. Okay, it's from raw potatoes. Another thing that I've been doing is taking the jacket potatoes, doing the whole potato in the air fryer. It takes, I think it was the same amount of time, 25 minutes for a potato about yay size, cutting them in half, and they are the crispiest, most delicious outsides, better than my oven. Rightio. Now to finish that off, I'm just going to use a little bit of parsley. And I'm thinking maybe a little bit of oregano as well. I might actually finish that just with a little bit of fresh herb in there. That's where I can use my stalks. Now I'm getting to the point. Finally, the reason this is taking so long is that I think this is maybe dying. But you can see now, if you could see, the sauce is just starting to cling to the top of the pan. Can you see that? So I've put nothing else in there, and if you have a look, you can see there's just a tiny bit of wine left in the bottom of that pan.
It smells beautiful.
But the colour is beautiful, and it's thickened slightly because I don't like to use the flowers and stuff to thicken if you don't need to, okay? But if it is too thick, which it won't be. I always worry about my palate with salt and everybody else's because I think sometimes, Brett, you're putting more salt in there. But I think like when you become a chef, you realise there's a point in your palate that you get to that's you're like, right, that's perfect. But perfect for me. Okay, now, as I said, I've reduced it enough to know that I can put a little bit more stock in there. So just a little tiny piece, just to do that. Temp check your chicken always, because you know your chicken has got to be cooked, really a thigh like that, up to over 75. For at my work, every single piece of meat that we cook has to be over 75 degrees. I bet it's the same in here probably. And that actually, if you think about it, if it's beef, ruins the piece of beef. Because if you're a medium rare steak lover, it's 54 degrees, right? I would say that this little piece of chicken here will be cooked beautifully. But I would say the slightly larger one, I'll have a look, will be probably at about 60 something. 68. See this handy dandy thing here? I never understood why people don't have this. We have to temp check every single piece of meat that comes out of our kitchens all the time. There is no guesswork. You know, you can teach people these things, right? But unless you know how much pressure to put between each finger, it's not going to work for you either. Okay, so I think to take all of the guesswork out, you use one of these. It's the best thing that you could ever have. This one is a Weber one, so a barbecue one, but you can get them, they're everywhere. And honestly, it's just, if you cook a steak for someone and you say, oh, how do you want your steak cooked? And they say, oh, I'd like it, you know, between medium rare and medium. Oh, you wanted it about like 57. You can take it off at 56, it'll rest up to 57. Okay. The worst tongs ever. So into here, I'm just going to put my chicken straight in like so. All of the thyme, all of the garlic, everything like that just goes straight on top. Ray McVinney was the one that said to me, Brett, you never put anything on a plate that you don't eat. And I'm like, that's true. But what about if you've cooked with it? Because I would know looking at this dish, I'm not going to eat the bay leaf and I'm not going to eat the stalks of the thyme. But in there, and by the time it gets to the table, you're just adding more and more flavour anyway. And I quite like how rustic it looks.
Can you eat them?
You could, but the bay leaves are dried, so no. And the thyme stalks right now are soft. So yes, as they get back in towards, you know, because they're all starting to grow right now, at the end of, you know, like when they say, well, mine are at home, but usually about 3 or 4 weeks ago, my whole bush looks like it's going to die and it's all stalks. But that new growth at the moment, just like your rosemary. A little bit of parsley goes on there, and that is my chicken dish. I'm going to take that one stalk off there. And there is my Spanish chicken with crispy garlic. To be honest, it's probably the reason I cooked that today is that that's still one that we cook at home now, and that's 15 years ago was when I first came up with that recipe. But guys, thank you so much. I hope you've had a good afternoon. The 3 dishes are finished. Thank you to Frankie for asking such a great question. And I think there was a lovely lady right at the back over here as well that I'm going to give the other copy to. What was your name? Jan. I'm going to give this to Jan. Otherwise, I hope you had a really good afternoon. And, thank you guys very much and have a great day.